Hey guys, my name is Maureen Palmersheim, and I'm writing a novel about, well, it's complicated, but kind of a girl who goes back in time to prehistoric Rome and then Ireland, and it kind of, I don't know, goes back and forth between her real life and things that she heals from by going into this fantasy of hers. So, I was in my past video, I was talking a little bit about the main character, Laine, and her personality. I think in this video, I'll talk about her mom, Laine's mom, and a little bit more about Laine too. Um, so Laine's mom is a very intelligent, beautiful lady, and she very strong personality. So they're from Montana, and Laine's mom had sort of a rough childhood. So just from what she told Laine about her childhood, she got abused by her stepdad, and her mom, Laine's mom's mom, her grandma, who she never really met, didn't really do anything to stop the abuse that was going on for Laine's mom and Laine's mom's siblings. So, in Laine's life, there's all this sort of like passed down trauma, and she's trying to work through it to make her life better and break these ancestral patterns that seem to keep repeating. It seems like in life, like every generation gets a little bit better than the next one, and in no way is like Laine's mom bad or anything. It's just she does the best she can with what she had to deal with. And Laine sort of realizes that and has compassion for her because yeah, she didn't have it so well. So one of the differences between Laine and her mom is that Laine is like creative differences. So Laine's mom is very into literature and reading also, but her mom loves like realistic stories about people's lives, and Laine likes fantasy. So mom doesn't necessarily support Laine in her endeavors because Laine likes to write stories about cows and fairies and things. Like, she loves all these stories from early Celtic literature that she took in college, like the battles that went on in the warriors. And she likes to incorporate those in her life because the stories, like, they kind of lack emotion, but she feels like she puts the emotion into the characters. So she kind of like reinvents the old myths, and that's what she does, and that's how she sort of makes sense of her life. So Laine is writing a blog called Modern Legend, and that's where she reinvents these myths with her life experiences and emotions, sort of trying to stay true to the myths but still putting her own twist on them, and that's what she likes to do. So I thought today I'd just read a short story I wrote about a cow, And it's kind of, I think it's sort of misinterpreted because it's like a cow who has, uh, you know, thoughts and feelings. And I think animals do, but a lot of people don't think that way, and that's fine. And I'm totally, I try to be a vegetarian, but I'm not always perfect at that. And I also, you know, I don't mind, I'm not trying to be like a PETA person or anything, but this story is really about transcending suffering through meditation and compassion and through the passion of life and just following one's dreams and being authentic. So that's what this story is really about. Don't mind my neck being all blotchy, it just gets that way. Um, so yeah, I'm gonna read the story. It's called All Cows Bow Down. And the cow, his name is Donny. So already. Oh, and I talked in my last video about the Atman, Brahman stuff about sort of like Hindu philosophy, or people believe that animals can have sparks of the divine in them too, like all creation does. So that's kind of tied into this story as well. And I don't know everything about that, but it's just sort of my interpretation of what I've read. So, okay. All cows bow down. Donny passed for a black and white spotted steer. He originated from a long line of bright, sacred Hindu cows that had lost their faith over the generations. If he hadn't been standing plump in the Baylor University agriculture lot, but some other part of campus, he'd have gotten himself confused with a scholar. While many of Donny's brothers and sisters willed away their bodies for no cause or libation, Donny hadn't forgotten what it felt like to be sacred. In the lost faith of his youth, they believed in Ātman, meaning world soul, or was that Brahman? He couldn't remember. Meaning an individual's true self existed beyond identification with outside phenomena. Because Ātman theory influenced Ahimsa, the culture of ethical vegetarianism, some folks got mixed up with what Donny was saying. They canceled their subscriptions to Modern Grazer. They discarded him as radical. He was parroted as propaganda. In reality, his tales embodied the lowly man and woman getting ahead of their circumstances. His stories celebrated anyone who hadn't turned out on the bottom, who had been turned out on the bottom, and found themselves with a new perspective. He tried a renewed outlook now, but solicitudes over Gail and Pete floored him. His ex-owners, the ones who abandoned him there, pronounced his name with a long southern drawl. He fertilized their fields for 9 years, ate noxious weeds. His gut felt like it had been cranked in a compost tumbler. In his pondering, he accidentally smacked his tail against an hourglass branding of a young heifer that glanced at him and continued to graze. He cleared his throat and started to protest. He imagined the other cows race to his pundit, drooling over what he had to say. Healer Donny, they would chant. Guru Donny. But then he could not be stopped. In his mind, a bodiless hand stretched out a golden accolade to the rising young cow laureate. Today we take back our bodies, he said. The other cows showed their butts to him. They bring us here after all those years of service to be slaughtered. Our service has gone duly and noted to its last. Who's with me? No one moved except for the cow with the hourglass. She blinked an eye in his direction. She'd become a fly landing pad. Donny sat on his haunches. Every speech called for water, but there was none. Not in Cowtown. All cows bow down. Suddenly, a human jaunted into the corral. He vibrated like a bee on Pollen Tuesday. 2 flowers for the price of 1. I won't get up, the human said. It won't get up. But Donny summoned someone behind him. A veiled figure in white, Lakshmi, floated and dripped in gold, a miniature goddess the size of a canning jar. Donny sat up. He was a sleep-induced noxious, methane-gassy bovine. Move, the man said, but Donny kept his gaze on little Lakshmi until his side burned under a lit match. His teachings taught him that the ego was the cause for pain or pleasure, not the Ātman, which contained a fleck of the universal God inside all beings. He plunked down again and drew in his root chakra, which allowed him to feel safe. It healed the loneliness of his early years. He could see it through his eyelids. Mom and Dad were huddled on the floor, one equated to an opium addict, the other succumbed to darkness. Where he felt neglected in the past, now he felt great compassion. He perceived a root extending from his tailbone into the ground. His chakra, a bright red light at the end of his pelvis, told him, take this red and put it to your heart. Hypnotized, Donny did so. He felt a euphoric shiver. Well, I guess that's my lot in life. Made me who I am today. Donny drawled. He was in truth a drawler. The man lingered. He kicked Donny in the ribs with his steel boot. Get up. Donny heard only his inner guide leading the way. It mimicked shifting his consciousness, not changing anything else on the outside. He imagined a string stretched to the top of his head, reaching into the sky, outer space, the universe. His arms stretched around the universe, making it whole. The peace surpasses all understanding. Donny let out a gust of hot breath, held within his chest. He grew zen. All cows bow down. Before he let out his second exhale, an army of tiny soldiers hoisted him to his feet. He waited in the death line. His girlfriend's tale switched a beat. When given the chance, he did not croon out his disapproval or ask for a petition. He asked only for forgiveness for himself. He spoke under his breath. This time his voice sounded like his higher self. It sounded like poetry, promise, hope, and significance. He saw the flash of a bolt gun and a single hay fever tear in the eye of the human who had been restraining him. Or was that tear the God in them both connecting through a final Brahman? Donny's essence rang out, though he was no longer a living cow. In Cowtown, all cows bow down. It is a sacred life, even one of suffering. All cows are sacred, all living things sacred. He watched his body being hung up with a giant hook, only his body. A wise cow shall strive for Ātman. Ātman is the eternal part of all creatures, constant, untainted. He is the universe. He is the utmost goal. That is the end. Thank you guys for listening, and I'll see you next week for another video. Bye!